Girardi was in court today. This is the estranged husband of Real Housewives of Beverly Hills star Erica Jane and the disbarred mega lawyer who's been under fire for a huge embezzlement scheme involving his law firm. His law firm was one of the most powerful in LA and beyond. It was doing major cases, but clients have been actually accusing him of stealing from them for years, and it finally all blew up in late 2020. He's disgraced, his marriage is over, etc., etc. We haven't seen him out in public beyond tabloid photos, but he was finally charged last week with 5 counts of wire fraud for stealing $15 million from clients. So he was in court today for an arraignment. You can see him here walking into court. We were all the media was outside waiting for him, and he showed up about 12:30. There was a big run to get to the stairs where he needed to climb up. He had parked in a restricted parking area. It was a government van he was actually in. This is his federal defenders who were with him, so they were transporting him basically, and a cameraman gave us all the heads up. We were all gathering around waiting for him, so there was kind of a rush down over to the stairs to see him, and he had his lawyers and his brother with him, a caretaker who I've seen in tabloid photos, and it was a slow shuffle, but also he wasn't as frail as some of the tabloid photos might make him look. His face is pretty gaunt, but he moved not too slowly. It was some slow going up the stairs, and there was some help with that. But he had some assistance from one of his federal defenders, Craig Harborough, here you can see here, and his caretaker had his arm from time to time, but he never really needed too much physical assistance, and really it was just kind of a surreal scene. I mean, somebody remarked how quiet we all were, but he had they had declined comment in the beginning and kind of waved us all away. And for me, there's always kind of a line between when do you just bark out stuff to sound like a paparazzi. I mean, I felt like we should have been saying something to him, but I mean, there was just like kind of an air of like tackiness to like barking out a question at him. And, you know, there's some reporters who've been covering him for a long time, done some really great reporting on him. Matt Hamilton, Harriet Ryan were there from the LA Times, Amanda Bronsted from Law.com, who I had the pleasure of editing. So I've read a lot of her Tom Girardi stories over the years, but, you know, he wasn't saying anything, and he didn't even say anything when he got into court. But, you can see him, how he's dressed here. I mean, this is a guy who wore polished suits and was always schmoozing the room, and he just walks silently. You can see he's got this black mask, which is handy, but everyone had to wear masks in the courtroom. Baggy black slacks and a baggy purple sweater, or it was described plum in an LA Times article. I thought that was good. Over a collared shirt. He walked pretty slowly through the throng of media, but he really just needed some direction on where to go, which courthouse entrance to go to. But not a lot of surprises in the actual arraignment. He is going to undergo a mental competency exam, and the assistant U.S. attorney said they weren't objecting to that request from his lawyers because they know that they figured that was going to be an immediate issue here. So Judge Stevenson went ahead and authorized it, said that she'd reviewed materials, and it indicates that there are questions about, you know, whether he has a mental defect or something that prevents him from understanding the proceedings. So that led to the judge actually entering a not guilty plea herself on Girardi's behalf instead of allowing Girardi to do it, because they don't know if he's competent to understand the proceedings. So that's a procedure that they do in that case. And the magistrate entered the not guilty plea, and now it's going to go to Judge Staten, who is the lifetime appointment judge assigned to this, and she's going to be the one who ultimately determines if Girardi is competent to stand trial or not. And there's attorneys are going to consult with her chambers about a briefing schedule for that to determine when the first brief is due, appointments, that kind of thing, and maybe schedule a hearing. My experience with Judge Staten is if unless she's required by law to hold a hearing on this, it very well could be decided on the briefings and through a in-chambers notice. We're just going to get a ruling on this in Pacer. So that today really might have been the last time that we'll see Tom Girardi in court. Possibly. We got to see what happens here, but nothing is going to happen until he's actually declared competent to stand trial, and I'm not sure if that's what the likelihood of that is. But one remarkable thing about the hearing, one thing that caught my attention, was he actually drew a couple of others to the 8th floor of the federal building for the court appearance. It was Rick Kramer, who's a longtime trial services professional. He does presentations, helps lawyers kind of figure out how to present their trial, visually and PowerPoint wise to the jury. And also Tom Nolan, who's a prominent trial lawyer. And I know Tom Nolan has known Tom Girardi for a long time. I mentioned him in another video, just that I had talked to Girardi in the context of Tom Nolan moving to another firm, and he recommended Tom as one of the people I talked to for the article. This was back when I worked at the Daily Journal, and it was kind of this just clubby little newspaper for lawyers. So the editor was constantly assigning what could be called puff pieces like that. But it was also a really interesting job and a cool way to meet all these really prominent lawyers. I mean, I got to go to lunch with these guys at like this California club and hear all about the cases that they've done over the years. But he showed up at Girardi's arraignment today and was just kind of on the edge of his seat, like quite literally on the edge of his seat, leaning over and just watching Tom. I mean, he just, it's just for people who've known him for years, it's just kind of crazy to see him in court like that. And, Rick Kramer was the same thing. To call them supporters of Girardi, I'm not sure that's accurate. I certainly wouldn't go that far, but they were kind of just looky-loos. They've known him for years and just wanted to see what was going on. But Rick Kramer, I actually met a few months ago because he was at Michael Avenatti's sentencing, supporting him. So, I mean, he has, people have friends, and it's, they stand by each other. So it was all really a stark reminder of Girardi's influence. When I commented to a friend who knows all these people, I just commented that Tom Nolan was at the arraignment, and he replied, Tom Girardi counted as his friend 2 U.S. presidents, numerous senators, judges, and other famous people. I don't blame Tom Nolan one bit for being his friend. So the first thing Judge Stevenson did this afternoon was appoint counsel. She went over sealed financial affidavit and appointed Craig Harborough and Georgina Wakefield to do the case, and they were to represent Girardi, and they were both with him as he went up the staircase. Must have gone to Orange County to the assisted living center to pick him up, but it was pretty routine that he was going to get public defenders. I mean, he's personally bankrupt. Like, when you're personally bankrupt, I definitely think you qualify as being poor enough to qualify for a public defender. Girardi's brother was there. You can see him in the jeans and plaid shirt walking. He's a dentist in Seal Beach, and he's going to back $250,000 bond just through a signed affidavit. So it's on him if for some reason his brother absconds. Stevenson determined that electronic monitoring isn't needed because of just Tom's living situation. And so court documents say that's a memory care center. And Harborough actually said Girardi can't find his passport, but he'll turn it over if he does. And then there's other standard restrictions on he's not supposed to leave the Central District of California, which is Los Angeles, Orange County, that kind of thing. There's also standard restrictions on what he can do with his assets. He's not supposed to do anything involving $1,000 without notifying the court. But given his personal bankruptcy status and the fact that the trustee has been selling all his personal belongings and sold his mansion, Harborough actually clarified that, if the trustee does something with the assets, that's not a violation of the court order, correct? And the judge confirmed no, that's not. So that's all pretty standard. So really, as I said, I think it might be very possibly the only time that we see him in court, unless Judge Staten actually holds an in-person hearing to address the mental competency thing, which she's going to have an evaluation from a doctor, and it's going to depend on what prosecutors argue. If prosecutors try to argue that he's competent, it could lead to to a hearing. But if they agree that he's not competent to stand trial, it's very likely that she just rules on the papers on that, and we're not in court again. So the real person to watch here is Christopher Kamen, who's the chief financial officer who was charged. And he was actually arrested a couple months ago in November. He had flown back from the Bahamas and was arrested in Baltimore, and on a separate case involving embezzlement from Girardi Keese that supposedly Tom Girardi didn't know about. So he's been in jail for 2 months, and that case is with Judge Staten, and it was deemed related to this new indictment. So she's doing both cases. And what I thought was significant was that Kamen actually recently waived the grand jury indictment, which the feds can charge by complaint, or they can go through the more formal, which is what they usually do to really pursue the charges, is the grand jury indictment, where they present evidence to the grand jury and have them sign off on probable cause for the charges. But for some reason, Kamen just recently waived his grand jury indictment in that other case, and is going to be charged by complaint, which that signifies cooperation. How much cooperation, we don't know, but he's at least willing to do that. So that could mean that, he's talking about something, or he's possibly talking about a plea deal in all the cases. We don't know, but there's some kind of level of cooperation in his other case. He's currently in jail and hasn't been arraigned in this case. But with prosecutors talking about the ongoing investigation and all that, and just how many people and how many attorneys are involved in this, and how many private judges, mediators, arbitrators who had hands in all the settlement stuff that Girardi was doing, all the settlements that they were overseeing, that Girardi was basically embezzling, and that they, it's kind of on them to monitor that. So it'll be interesting to see, because how much Kamen is willing to cooperate with prosecutors, because it seems like just giving his position as a chief financial officer, he has tons of knowledge about the law firm and everything that they're doing. I mean, he could possibly know where all the bodies are buried. So if he's cooperating and trying to get some kind of plea deal for himself, it could be really interesting to see what kind of indictments come down, if we see any more indictments in this, basically. And at this point, we don't even know if he's cooperating, but the waiver of the grand jury indictment is interesting. And, in these cases with multiple defendants, there's always somebody who cracks, or when you're in jail and trying to look at what you're going to do. I mean, sometimes, taking a plea deal, or, telling the feds about certain other things that about might sound kind of beneficial. So I think it's basically just all eyes on Chris Kamen right now. We have the arraignment of David Lira in the Chicago case. David Lira is Tom Girardi's son-in-law. He's going to be arraigned later this week in Chicago via video. And then Girardi's also supposed to be arraigned, but Kamen is charged in that, but he hasn't been arraigned yet either. So I really think all eyes are on what Chris Kamen is going to do, and if there's some kind of plea deal in place, or what he cooperates, and if he leads to more indictments on that. But right now there's no court date set. Like I said, the attorneys are going to consult with Judge Staten's chambers about a briefing schedule that works for her, and possibly a hearing on that. But like I said, I think that is very tentative. So I'll plan to keep following this, but right now, like I said, all eyes are on Chris Kamen. So we'll be continuing to track that, and I will keep you updated. I invite you to subscribe to my Substack newsletter to get all the insights into this and everything else I cover. Thank you.